Off. Um, I just want to welcome all of you to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Maddie. I'm thrilled to have you with us today. For those of you that are familiar with DreamBank, welcome back. And for those of you that this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you overcome obstacles and stay motivated. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Nikki Ryberg is a career coach and resume writer with over 15 years of HR leadership experience that guides clients on what and how in the job search or career space. She holds a certified digital career strategies certification, which is basically a way of saying, basically a fancy way of saying LinkedIn expert. I'm going to pass it over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Maddie and American Family, for having me today. I'm really excited to talk to you about LinkedIn. I highly encourage folks to drop any questions into the chat so that at the end, if there's time, Maddie can go through those and I can help address as many as we can get to. So we will get started. Thanks for being here. Oops, wrong button. Today, I want to talk a little bit about my own LinkedIn journey, as well as curating a homepage that matters. We'll talk a lot about engagement. I have some profile tips to suggest for all of you. We'll touch on whether or not LinkedIn Premium makes sense for you in your situation or not. And then I'd also like to share some fun ideas about QR codes and customized links and other ways to utilize LinkedIn for other marketing purposes, whether you're searching for a job, networking, or potentially using this for your own business or business development. And then I'll encourage everyone to try it. There are lots of experts out there if you need more assistance. And then I have 2 fun PDFs to give at the end of this that focus on LinkedIn profiles in particular, as well as utilizing LinkedIn for networking. So I hope that those are helpful for all of you, and we'll get started. So Maddie touched on this. Whenever I go to these presentations and folks start really digging into things, I'm curious about what their background is, what makes them a subject matter expert on the material. So I did go through a fairly expensive and lengthy course through the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, which was essentially a fancy LinkedIn certification. So this one was really geared more for job seekers, but it definitely taught me a lot about LinkedIn, what makes a strong profile, how to utilize it for your goals. And then in particular, it touched a little on the algorithm, and we'll talk about that a little today. Short answer, it's always changing. So anyone that says they're a total expert on it, short of working at LinkedIn and working on their algorithm, it changes frequently, but there are some things you can at least be aware of to stay cognizant of things, because if you use the algorithm in your favor, that's a good thing. If your eyes are already crossing over, like what's an algorithm, don't worry, we'll talk about that a little bit. I did build a business on here. I have over 8,000 followers that drive revenue and referrals my way. My background was in HR and I left it, no plan in place. I didn't even know what a career coach was. It's something that never would have come up on my radar at that point in my life. But a few folks had reached out to me asking for resume help at the time, and I had Googled, will people pay to have their resume done? And through there, I discovered that yes, indeed they will. And one of the best ways to find them was on LinkedIn, because a lot of the job seekers are on LinkedIn. So that brought me to this entire rabbit hole of what does LinkedIn offer? How does one start a business that way? And so I definitely have a lot of like personal, been there, done that, or here's some mistakes I made or things I would recommend. So just know that this comes from like, not only did I source talent when I worked in HR by finding people and trying to recruit them, I also have used it as a business owner, and I help clients that are job searching. They've had a lot of success, and I will acknowledge I've had a lot of fun and success on it. I had a random person from Colorado reach out who wanted to be a career coach and was just starting, and really resonated with the post that I was putting out there because she too wanted to primarily work part-time. And so we ended up meeting on Zoom, and fast forward 4 or 5 years later, we're actually what I call internet friends. We haven't met in real life yet, but we have a standing monthly meeting on Zoom where we talk about business, we refer clients back and forth, and it's just one of those fun success stories that comes from what you put out there is a little of what you'll attract back. And we will dive into how comfortable you are putting stuff out there because I'm fully aware that everyone's, kind of guidelines for that will be different. So we'll touch on that. And if you get a chance, share in the chat if you're willing. Who are you? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this today? If there's any specific questions as we go along, please put those in there because I'm really hoping to address as many of those as we can, or at least point you in some direction of where to find more information later. I think the most important thing about LinkedIn, and it's funny, people want to focus on their LinkedIn profiles. They want to have this perfect profile to attract recruiters. But really, at the end of the day, your homepage matters quite a bit because one of the biggest messages I will be sharing today is that LinkedIn is only as good as your engagement on there. So if you log into LinkedIn and your homepage doesn't really interest you, if you're seeing things that just either turn you off, they're not interesting, you're not learning anything, you probably will be a lot less likely to log on, which means then you're not as engaged, and like it kind of defeats the purpose of a lot of what we're talking about today. So I want to highly encourage everyone to curate it to you. So starting with connections, I'm a big fan of connecting to anyone and everyone you know. I have a lot of connections. There's no way I personally know all of them. That may not be the best rule of thumb for everyone. If you are a more private person and you just don't want your information out there, it's completely appropriate to use this for folks that you really know well and to have very high privacy settings. If that works for you, that's great. For those of you that are in business development, I would strongly recommend that you're connecting with past clients, current clients, potential clients, really utilizing this platform as a way to get to know people online a little better so that it could be appropriate to invite them to coffee or different free events that you're hosting. I just think the better connections you have based on your specific goals, the better LinkedIn is for you because you're seeing more of their content. And so that gets to what are your goals? So when I was in HR, I followed a lot of HR folks, especially those in the Madison, Wisconsin community, which is where I'm based. And now that I'm a business owner and I do career coaching and resume writing for folks all over the US and Canada, I follow a lot of the folks that are at the top of their game, the people that are featured in Forbes or would be referenced in like USA Today, folks that are running really large businesses or even small to mid-size in that space that put a lot of content out there for sales purposes, for networking. It's been a really good way for me to learn things. So when I meet with clients, one of the first things I ask if they're looking to make their LinkedIn better is, well, what are you hoping to use it for? If you're hoping to use it for job searching, that goes back to, are you connected with old coworkers? Have you connected with folks that you know on a personal basis? It can be really advantageous to use those first degree connections to see who some of their connections are. And that's where a lot of the networking magic can happen, is utilizing people you know well to introduce you to someone you may not. That can be really helpful from the job search perspective. If you were looking to do it for business development or starting a business, that would be a different strategy. So you want to just take a step back and think, what are my goals with this? And let's make sure I'm following and connecting with the right individuals as well as businesses. I also think it's a great learning platform. There are LinkedIn influencers just like there are on Instagram or on various other platforms. And I won't lie, sometimes They annoy me. One of the issues with my homepage right now is, as I was prepping for this presentation today, I thought to myself, I need to go back and unfollow some of these folks, or there's also the option to just minimize certain topics. Right now, I'm getting a lot of the, oh, if you do my secret 3 ways, you're guaranteed to get a job interview and make 40% more. My imposter syndrome can sometimes kick in when I see things like that, because I wonder, oh, are they telling folks something that I'm not helping my clients with, or is there some training I missed? And some folks are just a little more slick with their sales tactics than I personally feel comfortable doing. And so I just like not seeing it. And so, depending on what kind of space you're in and who you're following, a lot of the political stuff, I just minimized all of that. I don't want to see it. The total hustle culture, I don't want to see the, oh, you need to get up at 4 a.m. to have like a productive day posts. Those may appeal to some folks, they just don't to me. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to learn certain things, let's say you're seeking a job in change management, I would ask, who are the major thought leaders in change management? Who are the consulting organizations? Who are the folks that are out there putting out podcasts on it, putting out content out on it? Because probably more than likely they're using that content as a tool to drive sales for them. But for those of us like myself, I'm just a small one-woman shop. I learn a lot of really good tips and tricks from resume writers, from career coaches, as well as recruiters or HR leaders. So I would highly encourage all of you to think about even who you follow in other social media to see if they have a LinkedIn presence, because you can learn a lot of really good information. So the more you curate it to you, hide the things you don't want to see, make sure you are ringing the bell on the ones you do want to see, that will bring it to the top of your feed. And so some of these things, if they're kind of going over your head, you can research like how to better follow people on LinkedIn. There's like a bell icon that lets it show up first in your feed. There's a variety of hacks you can do. And frankly, the more you start to use LinkedIn, the algorithm will start to suggest things to you. So I would say don't worry about learning all of that overnight. Just start to make it something that's more interesting, that you actually want to go there and that you feel like you're getting some benefit from it. I think it is important to make a good profile. So we will talk about that today, because as you start to use it more and you do want to engage with folks, definitely if they look back to your profile, you want it to be strong so it stands out. I think it's an invaluable tool for job searches, for networking, and for verifying any type of information. For instance, if an employer told you, oh, this role opened up due to growth, but you see someone with that exact same title and 4 different individuals held it over the past year, it's something that would be fair to ask about in the interview, to say, okay, well, through my research, I noticed this, like, is this position different than those titles? And see what type of answer they have for you. It's not really that you're looking to be like, oh, gotcha. But I do think it's a really good way to trust your gut on something and to do a little more research and fact finding on your end, to just see if things are matching. Like, does the turnover story match? If there's folks you want to talk to, who else are they engaging with on this platform? It's a really quick way to see who's connected with others and who they tend to spend their time with. So I think that would be my first tip. Sometimes I keep it on my phone. Sometimes I take it off and just do it on my desktop. It depends on what season I'm in for my business or how busy my personal life is. So I think whichever one won't drive you mentally insane, but you're more likely to go there, then, put it on your phone. Maybe you check it in the morning during your coffee. So hopefully that helps you at least understand that you don't have to see the sales stuff you don't want to see. I have no problem unconnecting from anyone that tries to either be spammy or sell things or seems like they like to pick fights. I block people that I don't like. If there's former coworkers you have, or even current, and you don't want them to see you're more active on there, that's okay. People won't know that you blocked them. You just won't show up if they search for you. So that's another good tip. And if you're getting weird like messages from folks and things like that, just block them or report them if it seems like really unsafe. I get a lot of strange ones because now that I'm running a business, my profile is public. When I was in HR, I was much more careful about my settings just because of a variety of reasons. So depending on your situation, I completely understand. And I want to acknowledge that certain industries, like the financial industry, they have sometimes stricter rules in place in terms of their company or their industry expectations of what can be out there. So obviously you want to follow those. This platform is only as good as what you use it. So it's really like a set of weights. If you go on there and you have an amazing profile, but you never comment on anyone's information, you never follow up with them to do a coffee outside of the platform, you don't ask to do an informational interview via Zoom, it really won't do you any good. You might have a strong profile sitting out there. And I know a lot of the influencers like to say, oh, that's your best tool for a job search. Just have a really good profile out there. It's like passively fishing. I definitely agree with that, but I think in today's market, it certainly will get you much more forward if you are using it for more of the engagement. So I'm a big fan of commenting. The liking feature won't get you as much. The algorithm really likes it if you comment. So if you're looking to put your own content out there, it's really important to make sure that you're benefiting others and not just pushing your own stuff, because the algorithm will start to hide that a little and you may notice you're not getting as much engagement. So it's definitely a two-way street. So try to keep that in mind as you look to make your profile better and as you look to use this for things based on your career goals. I definitely want to talk about profile tips. I want to pull my actual profile up and go through some things on there. But first, I want to discuss some ways I've made it stronger. So for instance, I use Canva. I'm a really big fan of Canva. I use the paid version, but a lot of folks just use the free version, which I think for the average person is perfect. I use it for posts. I use it for like background images and things like that. So I definitely would take a peek there to see if that would be helpful for you. And for those of you that do have an interest in putting content out, there's a really fun site that I want to pull up that lets you do formatting. So I found this on Google searches back in the day. Sorry, the vacuum cleaner's running like right by me right now. Hopefully you can all hear okay. They will be done in like just a second. I apologize for that. But this site's really nice because you can put in different things, like you can put words in here and it will pop up in different formats that you can copy and paste into LinkedIn. It lets you find different emojis. And I think what my rule of thumb would be is see what the people at the top of their game, kind of the leading experts in your field, are doing. If, for instance, you're in a graphic design or marketing field, I think you're going to find that their posts, that their profiles, that the things they're putting out there are much more creative, probably are a lot more forward leaning with some of the things they're willing to do. If, for instance, you were starting your own small CPA firm, my recommendation and guess would be the emojis, really going creative with some of your formatting probably isn't worthwhile with your time. It would be more of what sort of content, what sort of thought-provoking things are you putting out there? How are you promoting yourself as a subject matter expert as an accountant? So it ultimately all goes back to your goals, but do know if you're looking to start putting more posts out there, hoping to attract a little more your way, which the guides that I'm providing after this presentation will include a lot of information on that. This is my hack for that, and I just think it's a really fun one. It's really easy, it's fast, and best of all, it's free. So the about section tends to be the hardest part for most folks. And it really should be in first person and be real. So for instance, I think probably 5-10 years ago, it was much more common to be in the third person, very factual, focus more on keywords for recruiter searches. But now people want to know who you are. So regardless if you're a college student pursuing internships for the first time versus an executive, when you start to interview for jobs, one of the first things they may do is Google you, Your LinkedIn profile may come up, your potential future subordinates, leaders, clients, they want to get a feel for who you are. So what you put out there should match what you want them to know about you within reason. Certainly, you don't need to share your whole life story. And I want to kind of talk on that a little when we pull mine up. So just keep in mind that you want to be a little authentic and genuine about who you are as a person. So weaving in some of your personality or a little of your interests outside of work can be a good thing to a degree. Definitely results should be mixed into your position. So hopefully for anyone who needs a resume right now, they're well aware that the more results focused it is, the better. I'm going to say it's the same thing with LinkedIn. You definitely want to have some of your results listed under each of your positions to showcase some proof and validation of what you bring to the table beyond just saying you're a good accountant. How do you prove that? How do you have some stories or results to back that up? If, for instance, you're a strong recruiter, well, what does your, time to fill, and think about the things that they're judging you for on a performance review. Are you demonstrating some of those on your LinkedIn profile with results to back it up? And if you're using it for business development, do you have really strong client testimonials? Do you have other ways to prove that your service is above and beyond? So think about what your goal is, and then are you visually displaying that on your profile? Anyone who is getting close to the age of 40, I want you to be really careful about age bias. It's a very, very real thing, especially as you get closer to 50. So anything you can do to kind of put yourself at that sweet spot of, I could be 35, I could be 55 based on my results, my titles, and things like that, but the actual years are not there. That can be really helpful to avoid some of that. So I'll show you some creative ways to do that when we pull my profile up. And then I also put yes to listing all the things. That does not mean every job duty you ever did, every win you ever had as a business owner. It's more about list the skills when they ask for them, list the volunteer experiences. If you published a book, make sure it's on there. Just really go through after the positions, everything that the platform has an opportunity for you to put out there, and be sure to do that, because if someone likes your about section, the results stand out, they're going to continue skimming. And definitely you need to have recommendations. My rule of thumb is you should have a minimum of 3, and they should be within the last 5 years. I see a lot of folks that have these amazing recommendations and they're from like 2012. And so for anyone that is currently job searching or looking to do anything, that's quite a long time ago. So you want to make sure that you have some, sorry about that. Go back here. Sorry about that. You really want to make sure that they're recent, because if recruiters are looking, they want to see more of your recent information. And the nice thing about LinkedIn is it lets you hide them. So if you do have more recent ones, you might want to leave all of them out there, or some of them, maybe you did a major career pivot and you don't want anyone even seeing that you did computer coding back in the day, because now you're in marketing and you don't even want them to tap you for that field because you didn't like it and you left it for a reason. In that case, it would make total sense to hide anything like that and to focus on your more recent marketing ones. That's just an example, but hopefully that kind of helps you get the wheels spinning as you think about what you want on yours. So with that, I want to pull up mine. I will be honest, I probably look at mine every 6 months or so and make updates. I tend to get a lot of ideas from following other LinkedIn writers, other career coaches, and I play around with different things. I haven't looked at it since probably the beginning of the summer, but we'll go through mine and I have some ideas for all of you and things to keep in mind. So definitely I'm a fan of updating the background image. This is just a freebie off of Google, like image search back in the day. have like a personal attachment to it because it's the first one I did when I started my business. I think you'll find that a lot of folks that are in the space I am or own their own business now have fancier ones with like their email and phone number, or it's more matched to their branding. In time, it's something I may do, but for now, I still like this. It's very important you have a professional headshot. Cropping ones from weddings, from like your senior pictures, especially if you're over the age of 25. Don't do that. It should be something within the last 3 years. I don't think you need to spend a ton of money on it. When I first started my business, I went to J.C. Penney's and just got some cheap headshots. I also have had a lot of clients where if budgets are really tight, I do think it's okay to use some of these AI services. I know many of the photographers and a lot of the experts would say no, but I'm being realistic that there's only so much money based on your job search or what your business goals are, that can be a way to save some money and still get a more like relevant recent picture out there. And so there's a lot of different ones on the market. Frankly, there's so many popping up at any given time. I don't even have any to recommend. My first rule of thumb is try somewhere local, like a J.C. Penney's or Target if they offer headshots. Oftentimes, college students with a nice camera will do it for a pretty good price. And if you are a person who, you own your own ad agency, then you need to invest in really nice professional headshots. So it just depends on what your goals are and what you're hoping to use it for. I had these headshots taken probably about 3 years ago, so it's getting close to my needing to do it again. And it wasn't that expensive, but it's really important you have a headshot. I often will have some clients who don't want to put their headshots out there and they just leave it blank. And I warn them, as recruiters are looking, as potential hiring managers or clients, they want to see who you are. They want to get a feel for a little of your personality, which ties into your about section. So you want a headshot that's in line with what you're putting on your about section. So if you're this warm, bubbly, friendly person, they're expecting that type of a photo. Does it match? Does it sync? But if you're going for more of a conservative approach and more factual based on whatever your line of work is, you might want more of a button-up professional headshot. That's something that a coach can help you with. It's also something that a photographer can help you with in terms of making sure it matches your brand. Um, it's really important, put your name out there, but this is a big one I like to focus on. This is what we call your headline. It should not be your current job. It should not be your current title. It doesn't even need to be your current business if you run your own business. It needs to be focused on what do you provide, what do you offer, and what do you help do. So for instance, if you were working in engineering, you might want to be focused on the types of functional areas of engineering you focus on. Maybe you have your PE, maybe you're more in the mechanical side. If you were to think about your elevator pitch and your return on investment to a client, to a customer, to a business, to someone hiring you, that is how your headline should read. So for instance, mine focuses on what I do for my clients. If I were still in HR, it would be more focused on what I do for my business or for my employees. So there's a variety of different ways to do this. My rule of thumb is if you're following the other thought leaders in your field and you're paying close attention to who's commenting on their items, you will get a strong sense really quickly of what types of headlines people have. Start there as a starting point, and then obviously don't plagiarize it, but use it as an idea and inspiration for yourself. And then you can start to come up with a good headline. It's also something a coach can help you with. I'm a big fan of the open to work. I'm not currently open to work. I'm very happy running my own business. But that said, I still have my open to work feature up just because you never know if a contract opportunity could come my way, or who knows, maybe some unicorn of a situation could appear in my lap by having this out there. I recommend that people do this, whether you're looking or not. I think it can be helpful to let recruiters know they can find you. Technically, this is supposed to be hidden from your current employer. LinkedIn will tell you, oh, we block this so your current employer doesn't see it. But the realist in me and the former HR person in me can point out, well, if they're using a third-party search firm for any of their roles, you have no idea what the other recruiters could see that are not affiliated with your company. That said, I think if you're working somewhere that's that petty that they don't like to see this, to me, it's like, are you sure you want to be there? In terms of the open to work banner, that's a whole other topic for a different time. If we have time, we can get into that at the end. I'm not a big fan of having it up if you are currently employed somewhere, unless you've been very open about wanting to move on for additional promotional opportunities or pivoting, or it's like a very open door policy. They know you're kind of like keeping an eye on things. If you're currently unemployed, that's kind of a different topic. I definitely think once it's been 6, 9 months, anything to draw some attraction your way can be helpful. There's different trains of thought on that. Some folks think it can deter from it. So I think that's really a case by case scenario, but just know there are different schools of thought on it. And I would recommend researching it and finding and applying the one that's best for you. So from there, my about section, I have changed this so many times over the years, but it follows the things that I recommended. It's first person. I'm talking about myself, my background, what I do, what I bring to the table. That would be very different than if you were going for an executive leadership role. In that case, you would want to talk about your team leadership philosophy. What are you like as a manager? What are you like to work with on a board of directors? Like, think about what you're aiming for and make sure that your about section helps you in that capacity. As a business owner, this is really getting at what is my coaching philosophy like? What's it like to work with me? What's a little of my personality so they can kind of start to feel out if they even would want to do a free consultation with me. I'm not for everyone, no coaches. So I'm trying to be really honest and open about what I'm like to attract clients where I'm a good fit for their needs. In my case, I make it very easy to find my email, my website, how to set up a free consultation with me. I think that's really helpful if you're in recruiting, if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, if you own your own business. Do you make it easy for people to find you? If you're more of like the average or passive job seeker, you may not want to put that information out there. It is private, and I won't lie, I get spammed constantly. It could be a full-time job just keeping up with the unsubscribe things I get by putting this information out there. But in my case, the good of potential clients outweighs the bad. So I think that will be a case by case decision. But regardless, at the end of your about section, what is your call to action? Do you want people to message you on this platform? Are you open for networking? Are you open for positions? Are you passively kind of saying, oh, I'm open to networking or chatting anytime over a cup of coffee? That can be the really easy way of putting like, oh, I'm kind of interested, but I'm not going to fully go out there and blast to everyone that I'm looking for a new role. There's different ways you can be strategic and a little savvy about that. But you do want to be clear about how do people find you and what are you hoping that they do after seeing this. So just think about that as you go to do a new about section or update yours is what do you want people to do with this information? The free handout that we're giving out after this presentation does a good job of walking through different ways you can structure your about section. And I also refer to some other experts in this field where you can take a look at their content on LinkedIn, and that will give you a variety of ideas. From there, I have services. If you do offer things like that, I definitely suggest doing that and taking advantage of it. LinkedIn's a very professional platform. You want to make it easy for other professionals to find you. For the average person where that doesn't apply, you can skip things like that. I also feature some of my favorite and top posts. I think that that can be something that's good to do for everyone. Even if you're early on in your career, if you had a post that had some really like good thought-provoking things in it, or maybe you put a sample of something out there that you created, that can be a good way to market yourself and show some proof of what you've done. It's kind of like a shortened version of a work portfolio on a website. Like we don't all need those, but it can be kind of the small, easy way to just showcase some really strong things about yourself. So I encourage you to take advantage of that if it applies. From there, I mean, the activity and things like that, you can start to get a feel for which posts are getting the most traction. Are you getting comments, different things like that? That starts to get a little more into the using this for like a sales or attracting a job perspective. but just know there's some good information there, and I definitely would keep an eye on it. But your experience section, this is one that's really important, is you want to make it clear. Like, I like to summarize a little. Let's say it was a job seeker who was like a director level. We'd talk a little bit about high level, what's their role, maybe who they report to. If it's a smaller, less known organization, we might give more information on it so that someone didn't have to go seek it out. But here I offer my services, but I would recommend for the majority of folks, this is where you're mixing in some of those results. So sometimes a good rule of thumb is to take some right off your resume. Maybe you reword them a little, maybe you literally just copy and paste. I do like folks to learn more about you on the resume, so I wouldn't just simply copy and paste all of them, but it definitely can be a good way to shorten your time on LinkedIn, to utilize some of your hard efforts from your resume to do it here. Also, if you're looking at it from a sales or business development perspective, it could be a good place to put a client testimonial. Even though we have recommendations down below, this still will stand out if they're looking here to learn more about you and what you might bring to the table. And then I had mentioned earlier that you can get really creative to avoid age bias. So in my case, I did not. I really like, you can get creative with like my story introductory. I've seen folks do things like additional experience, just like you might on a resume. You can do that. And the nice thing is LinkedIn does not require you to put your dates there. I did that because I'm being pretty open and honest about my background, where I've been, like how old I am, because I'm a coach and I'm looking to attract other people where they relate to that. If I were to leave what I'm doing right now and let's say want to pursue a position elsewhere as a W-2 employee, this would be taken off. It would be more like a past experience, additional history, things like that. And it would be very based on like titles, results. I would not be sharing I had children, stayed at home, any of those things. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But at the end of the day, it gets back to right now, my goal is to be open about my story so that people who relate to it can find some additional help and support from me. If I were looking for a role, my future supervisor shouldn't care about any of this. They should care about my experience, my results, and things like that. So I would definitely change this. But for those of you that are getting closer to 40 or are over 40, just know you can be creative in this area to list different things without having to put all of the dates there. And it can also be a good way for people to do that who've had a career gap. Maybe you stayed home for a while, maybe you took a medical leave. There's ways you can weave in your wins without drawing attention to the gaps or what the years were. So I think that it's just good for people to know that and take advantage of it. And I don't like to list every position you've ever had. Typically going back 10 years is a good rule of thumb. And then utilizing something like this to be creative to showcase anything else that you think is compelling enough for them to want to know. In terms of education, put it on there. I wouldn't list your grad year unless you have like zero internship or work experience and you're really kind of struggling to find that first job. In that case, I would put your grad year because it makes it clear to folks, I'm a recent grad. There's a reason why I don't have a lot of experience. But let's say you are a recent grad who had a lot of really strong internship experience. Maybe you even had a summer role under your belt. Take your grad year off because that way they can measure you based on your internship and some of your work experience. You might find that a company is more willing to give you an interview for something that wanted 2 years of experience because they liked what they saw at your internship. So it can just be, again, case by case, but just make a strategic decision there based on what your background is and maybe what some of your roadblocks are. Same for if you recently got an MBA, I may advise you leave your undergrad off, but put the MBA dates on there because it's very clear you did that while you were working full time and it's recent. Same on certifications or if you go back to school for a career pivot. In that case, the more recent grad year makes sense and can help you. So just make smart decisions there and think about how that may or may not help you in terms of that. I'm a big fan of putting any licenses or certifications on, similar to the slide earlier. This can only help you if it's relevant to your role or even tangentially. I think, let's say you were certified in yoga and you work as like a psychologist or an HR or really any role, that could be something that's beneficial to put. It shows some of that mindfulness, it shows some of that, balance and some of those different things you bring to a role, peace, calm. Um, so really, if it's relevant in any sort of good way, I would put it on there. I like to see volunteering on there, but it really probably needs to be in the last 5 to 8 years. Oftentimes, I'll see clients that have a lot of really good volunteer experience, but it's all from 15 or 20 years ago. That tends to be too long. So my rule of thumb is probably go back about 8 years. And if you don't have anything, in the last 8 years, then I would either say leave it blank or see if there's something you can find. That can be a really helpful tip for people who are re-entering the workforce or making a career pivot. And especially for those in the nonprofit world, let's say you were nonprofit in the beginning of your career, and then you did corporate, and now you want back into nonprofit. I would still highly encourage you to get some more recent nonprofit volunteering under your belt versus trying to rely too much on things that were longer ago, just because it's just not as helpful from a marketing perspective, typically. And then big fan of recommendations. We talked on those earlier. And if you have publications, put them on. If you have a work portfolio, if you've published any courses or books, definitely showcase those. I like to list organizations, courses I've taken, and really that's kind of about it. You can certainly put your causes in there, but hopefully this goes through a portfolio or a profile from A to Z, gives you some ideas, gives you some tips and tricks. If you want to bold things, if you want to have some formatting, which I am a big fan of, I have some within my about section. You can use that link that I shared earlier that lets you do that. So it makes it really easy. Here. Okay, so sorry about that. I gotta just minimize this for a bit so I can see my screen a little better. There we go. A big one is that clients ask me is, do I do LinkedIn Premium, Nikki, or not? And the answer is case by case, it depends. LinkedIn Premium is something that you can pay additional money for. So for instance, the career version is about $30 a month. There's a business option that I pay for that's $60 a month. And for folks in sales, it goes up from 100. I think it really depends on what you need. They like to advertise that you have access to LinkedIn Learning, private browsing. There's things like top job choice and different things like that. And it will allow you to have a free trial your first month. What I typically tell folks is, do you need more profile searches and in-mail messages? So for instance, the guide that we'll distribute at the end of this presentation is all based on reaching out to people on LinkedIn, typically when you don't know them or you're trying to get an introduction. If you're finding that you are maxing out at the number of people you can reach out to and you're doing it and you're starting to get a little follow through from it, I would say in that case, it could be worth it. If you're using it for networking for sales or business development or starting your own business, I do think it can be helpful. I don't think it's required. I don't think it's necessary, but I do think, like in my case, I'm featured on LinkedIn ProFinder. I need the business option in order to be profiled on there to generate some leads. So it makes total sense for me. My average job seeker, it may not make sense for. It really will depend on your circumstances, but I do like it for training. I think the LinkedIn training is really strong. I think they do a good job of vetting their talent. So if you're looking to utilize any of those features, I think that it can be really worthwhile for. So I use it. It's not for everyone. If you are job searching, I don't know if I buy into the top job choice being like something that's worthwhile to pay for. I think if you have the right experience and strong items, I don't think that will be the thing that moves the needle for you to get an interview call. Now, if there's any recruiters on here or other job seekers have found otherwise, like, please correct me. It's just my common sense gut is like, "Oh, I don't know about that." The application insights can be helpful. It gives you some insight into what your competition is. I don't think you need to do that to figure it out. Sometimes you can do that through working with a coach or just through Glassdoor and some other areas, but it could be helpful if you're looking to make a major pivot or see like, oh, 80% of the people have a master's and I have a 2-year degree. Like some things like that can sometimes be helpful, but oftentimes you can find those through other sources. So I'm a fan of if you're really using it for networking, go for it, or the training. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me. One thing that I think is really fun is QR codes and customized URLs. So LinkedIn is really awesome because you're marketing your biggest asset, which is either you or the product or the service that you're selling. And so there's a lot of cool things you can do. You can Google how to do these later, but you can do hyperlinks and have your own website almost to your profile. So for instance, mine is linkedin.com/in/my name. Everyone can go in and create their own. If you have more of a common name, it might be a little harder for you. But I went in and did that. And then using hyperlinks, I did this test of let's network, connect today. And it will go right to my LinkedIn profile. And I like that a lot because I can put that on a resume. It's a great way to end your resume at the end, like, let's network, connect today. They can click right to it. It can be really fun to put at the end of an email signature, or you might even want to put it on any type of other electronic document that you're sending out. So I definitely would take advantage of doing that. I also think just listing the URL on a resume, on a bio, or even your email signature can be a great way to build your connections and that network database that LinkedIn is. And then also you can do QR codes, which I think
Um,
is super fun.
Nikki,
Yeah.
did you mean to be sharing your screen?
Is it not sharing?
It is not sharing.
Oh, that's strange. One sec. I was, but I don't know why. Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay. Can you guys see it okay now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
we're
Okay,
good to
good.
go.
Gotta love technology. It's much easier to see this too. So hopefully now that you guys can see my screen, that works a little better. But so I use the URL of Nikki Ryberg, and then with hyperlinks, you can get creative to go right to your profile. So I love to see that on resumes. I love to see it on bios, email signatures, any type of marketing materials. If you're in sales, it can be really fun. And so use that to your advantage where it's appropriate. And then same for QR codes. I'm a fan of these like on the back of a business card. I go back and forth on resumes just because it does put your picture there and it's still best practice to not have a picture on a resume for like EEOC reasons. It makes discriminating easier, a variety of things. So recruiters don't like it. Sometimes it causes them extra work because they have to go in and black out your picture before they can pass it on to a hiring manager. So, I'm not sure that it would be the best place, but if you're in a more creative field or if you're in like a sales role, I could potentially see that being kind of a fun place to put it on a resume. Definitely on a bio. I'm a big fan of that. And really any networking or sales materials you have, having the link to that makes it easier for people to connect with you. So if you're a speaker or maybe you're going to a conference and you're handing out your card, that makes it really easy for people to just connect with you right away. So I definitely would take advantage of that. Both of these two things, I didn't provide the step-by-step instructions here. Just Google them. They're really easy to find. They change, like LinkedIn can change from time to time. So the steps might be a little different. So that's why I just recommend Google the most up-to-date steps. But I definitely hope some of you can take advantage of that. And so now we're at the end. I just want to encourage all of you to try it. Know that there are experts out there if you need more help. There's a lot of great books available at the library on these topics. If you follow some of the bigger names that are LinkedIn writers, which are all provided in the guide I'm giving at the end of this. You'll get some good ideas. And I would just say, test the waters, start with where you're comfortable and go from there. And like I said, I have both a profile and a networking guide to share. I want to thank all of you so much for your time today. I apologize for the vacuum cleaner and some of the technical difficulties, but hopefully at the end of the day, you still were able to get the content and some of what you needed to help make LinkedIn more valuable for you. So with that, hopefully we can get through a few questions. So Maddie, do we have anything that I can help
Yes, so we
answer?
had a bunch of questions
Okay,
come.
great.
And so I am going to do my best. I was keeping notes
Okay,
that
good.
also had them here. So I'm just going to dive right in. And this one came in at the earlier part of our session, but I have my 9 to 5, which I love, but I also have my side hustle. I created a LinkedIn page for my side hustle, but in my personal LinkedIn profile, I am pushing content for both my 9 to 5 and side hustle. Is that harmful?
Oh, that's a good question. And I've run into this a lot more lately. A lot more people are doing side hustles. So it depends. First of all, have you checked with your HR department or employee handbook? Because some companies have very strict, like, you can't do anything outside of our job type of thing. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying that that's fair, but you first want to make sure you're not in violation of anything with your own company, especially if it's anything at all competitive, anything like that. Let's assume it's okay since you're doing it. Some folks have even done separate LinkedIn profiles where they've had their corporate profile and then maybe they put like their middle initial or do something different for their side hustle. Others combine them. I think it's entirely appropriate to combine them as long as they're not conflicting with one another, as long as you're on the up and up with your employer. Because at the end of the day, the branding still gets back to you. So a lot of folks like to do, like, let's say a LinkedIn page or company page for their side hustle, they still want to see you. So I think I would try to utilize it for both if it's appropriate. Worst case, I would try to get creative with a separate individual profile, but that's a lot to manage and probably isn't super realistic. So I hope that answers the question. If there's more, let me know or shoot me an email offline, because depending on the situation, I might have like some other ideas.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, and then another question came in. Is a new reference from a former coworker 10 plus years ago okay to include, or does it need to be from a more current coworker?
Ideally, it would be a supervisor, first of all, but if that's not the case, it's still, I would be more appropriate from a more recent one. Things that are 10 years ago tend to be so much longer ago that you run either age bias, where they're like, how old is this person? Or they may think, oh, that was so long ago, things are so different now, maybe they can't like relate to what it is now. So there's just so many biases that can go into things that were longer ago. I would go for the more recent one, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, and then another question. Here or where would you recommend listing community leadership experience? I was recently accepted into a local Chamber of Commerce leadership class that is a 9-month program.
That could go under education. It could also go under the community and leadership, or you could list it as a position. So let's say you're currently working, you could put your current position first, and then you could create that as though it were a position, but be very clear within the explanation of it, how it's part of a class, etc., the things you're getting from it, because then it's going to appear higher up on your profile. Not everyone always goes down to the bottom to read it. So you could do it one of those 3 ways would be my recommendation.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just like rapid fire
Yeah,
at you, but the chat
please
was
do.
full, so I'm trying to get to everyone's too. Um, I've heard the about section should be short, 1 to 2 paragraphs, but I see Nikki's is longer. Is there a recommended length for the about section?
Best practice right now would be longer. Most of the coaches and experts, including the ones that I did my class through, would tell you to utilize that space to the best of your ability, because the algorithm, if a recruiter or potential client was searching for you, you're giving them more information, which is making you more likely to appear on a feed. That said, if you don't have a lot to put, you don't want to just have like jargon out there for the sense of having it, but you can do things like areas of expertise, areas of specialty, and things like that to make it a little longer without having to get so personal into your own story or background. But my recommendation would be to try to make it longer than 2 paragraphs, because then it's not as personal and you're just not getting the advantage of them getting that side of you, nor the keyword search element either.
Um, do you recommend verifying yourself on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not verified because it won't work for me. Like I don't have enough time to actually reach out to LinkedIn to be like, why isn't this working? But every time I try to upload my passport, it won't work for me. But I absolutely think people should. And so that's why when I say that, if they look at mine like, well, you're not Nikki, I have no idea why I'm having a hard time with that. But if it works for you, I would recommend doing it. It's something on my list to keep trying. I don't know if others have run in to that issue like I have, but I would try to if you can, because if it works, it takes like 2 seconds. So definitely.
Perfect. Next question. You mentioned only blah blah. You mentioned only going back 10 years for listing experience. Do you recommend the same if a person has been at a current employer for 13 years with 2 prior employee experience, 5 each?
That, so that one you might list all 13 years and then do like the additional section to list the other 2 roles for 5 years each. I have also had employees who have capped it at exactly 10 years. And then within that additional history section mention like they started as, XYZ position at company and were promoted into their roles. So it kind of depends on what you're going for. So you could leave it, but you could also weave it into the other area if it kind of goes into that story or like visually looks okay. It's not like a hard rule of thumb, but it's definitely something to kind of stick to.
Okay, I continue to hear that LinkedIn profile should have all of your work experience, even if it expands beyond 10 years. You might have already done this. However, oh shoot. However, the resume itself should be 1 page and lists work experience from the past 10 years. Can you kindly expand on this? You might have just answered this question.
Yeah, I think I answered it with LinkedIn. I would utilize that additional history, leave dates off. There are no page rules in my mind for resumes beyond if you're starting to go on to 3 pages, there should be some pretty good reasons why it's that lengthy. I think it's entirely appropriate to go on to 2 pages, and I always advise my clients to do a very similar approach to their things that are older than 10 years, 15 years on the resume, do an additional history section, list things, get the credit for the employer name or the results, but leave the dates off.
Perfect. Where could you learn about using LinkedIn for building a small business?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, when I first started, Andy Foote, it's Andy Foote, it's Foote. I was just looking his name up before this presentation in case this got asked. He's out of the Chicago area and he runs like a super user group for folks that use LinkedIn for business purposes. I don't know what he charges, but I do know he gives some really, really good free content on LinkedIn. So I would follow him and then start to read the comments because all of the other like top of their game LinkedIn folks are connected with him and comment on his things. So start following all of them. You'll get some good free content. And from there, you'll get at least start to get like, what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. You will get acclimated and like around other folks who do offer things like that that would be helpful. So that would be where I would start. And then from there, narrow down who you resonate with.
Perfect. And then, if you have worked in 2 industries, should you include both industry experience in your LinkedIn profile or focus on one industry?
I would probably focus on both, assuming that we don't have the age bias thing going on. I think I would still want credit for the other industry, even if it was in the additional history section, unless for some reason you didn't ever want to, like, let's say you left healthcare and you just hated it and now you're in like insurance and you just want to climb the insurance ladder like in car insurance, then you might want to leave it off because you might keep getting tapped for jobs in that area or people think of you in that sense. But I feel like that's kind of a rare exception for most folks. I think variety of industries is a good thing, and it shows that like you have that like universal ability to jump into things that maybe you didn't know about. So I think I would leave it unless there was like a reason not to.
Perfect. And I just added the handouts in
Yay.
the chat. I also will be putting this recording up by tomorrow or the latest end of day Monday. But thank you everyone for learning alongside of us this afternoon. We are right at time. And so until next time, friends.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.